Welcome to GCA Studios, sponsored by Game Change Agency. My name is Jay Taylor, and today I'll be talking with Scott LaVictor about how the combination of artificial intelligence and subject matter expertise can improve decision-making processes that rely on the observations of non-experts. In my GCA channel, viewers will meet leaders like Scott who are helping organizations understand their challenges and make informed decisions that lead to improved business outcomes. We highlight ways in which game changers help boards and senior executives think differently about business risk and discuss the role that effective governance and oversight plays in achieving profitability, growth, and other strategic objectives. Board members, CEOs, and other senior leaders will come away with a new perspective that will help them enhance accountability for corporate behavior, for performance, and for results. My guest today is Scott LaVictor, CEO of Arbor Insight, a Michigan company that develops software solutions that utilize the potent combination of artificial intelligence and subject matter expertise to uncover better information from human-computer interactions. Prior to co-founding Arbor Insight, he spent over 13 years in various roles within the U.S. national security community and is the recipient of multiple awards for activities related to a wide range of global security challenges. More recently, Scott managed corporate investigations for a Fortune 150 manufacturing firm. So Scott, thank you so much for being here with me today. Welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to found Arbor Insight.
Well, thanks, Jay. It's a real pleasure to be with you this morning. You know, for 25 years now, I've been focused on the issue of proactive risk management from my perspectives in law enforcement, national security, and most recently, corporate security. Now, as a former enterprise level risk manager yourself, you can appreciate that a key aspect of the risk management process is being able to gather the right information by asking the right questions. And in doing so, build the valuable context around critical issues that enables more timely, informed, and effective decisions. You know, at Arbor Insight, our mission really is to help individuals and organizations better understand the vital context in which critical decisions are made. And in so doing, increase the satisfaction of individuals and the effectiveness of organizations when making difficult decisions.
Well, tell me more about that. How are you and your team really changing the game with respect to using artificial intelligence to develop that critical context and helping people make decisions, either individuals, companies, or even government type decisions?
Well, Jay, we refer to ourselves as the better question company because we believe that if you start the process of information gathering by asking the wrong, incomplete, or inadequate questions, you're going to end up poorly informing decision makers, in effect, decrease the ability of your team to succeed in a given scenario, or even worse, place your organization at greater risk because they're relying on outdated or flawed information. So we're changing the game in a really unique way. We're combining subject matter expertise in artificial intelligence, most specifically machine learning, in order to digitize an expert interview process. In essence, really providing an intelligent guide to a human-computer interaction.
I see.
Yeah.
You mentioned machine learning. Let's unpack this a bit. What exactly is machine learning? How does it work?
So we've actually coined a new term for our solution, Jay. In general, we call it intelligent digital elicitation. Intelligent because it uses artificial intelligence and that machine learning capability. Digital because it's happening in the cloud, on your mobile device, or on your desktop computer. And elicitation because, unlike an open-ended questionnaire, elicitation is a guided process that draws out information that typical user, a non-professional, wouldn't have thought to mention or didn't think was important.
Okay.
Now, to your question about machine learning, I want to take a step back and talk about artificial intelligence for a minute. Artificial intelligence at a very high level is the idea, the concept of machines being able to carry out tasks in ways that you and I would consider smart. Now, machine learning is a component of artificial intelligence, an application of artificial intelligence that surrounds the idea of we should be able to just give computers, and actually more accurately, Jay, the algorithms that power the computers, access to good training data and let them learn from themselves. For those who haven't been exposed to artificial intelligence before, I explain it in the context of a teacher-student relationship where you have a known outcome. In the case we're talking about today, it's a requirement for more comprehensive understanding of an observation, opinion, or report. Now, think about it, I guess, this way. If you're teaching multiplication to your children, you don't teach them to memorize the answers, you teach them the process of multiplication. And that's what we're doing with machine learning. We provide that expert training data that informs the algorithms, allowing a computer to think through and process through a dynamic interaction and arrive at a conclusion initially very similar to that of an expert.
It's really interesting. Give us some examples of what you're talking about.
Well, many folks have heard about chatbots and virtual assistants, where the focus there is on the process of understanding human language and providing commands that fetch a piece of information or complete a simple task. But we're at Arbor Insight thinking about the other half of that equation, Jay, where we're wondering why the software isn't asking you the better questions in order to help you make better decisions. For example, personal assistants such as Siri, Watson, and Alexa, they can ask a short series of simple, direct questions because they're great at recognizing patterns in large amounts of data. Now at Arbor Insight, we're thinking about more complex, thoughtful interactions where large data sets aren't available. And that's where the combination of our subject matter expertise and artificial intelligence baked into that solution we call intelligent digital elicitation comes in to power various pieces of software, both our own, as well as chatbots and virtual assistants. And we can tailor that to individuals or businesses' specific use case or need.
It's really interesting. One of the reasons that I invited you here today is that I think a great application of this approach is helping companies to strengthen their ethics and compliance environment, and specifically how you use intelligent mobile apps to do that. So is this a problem that you were trying to solve?
Well, Jay, that's actually the first problem we're tackling with Arbor Insight's technology is actually in response to a defining moment in my efforts to help prevent and mitigate critical incidents, which is, like I mentioned earlier, a real passion of mine. I reflect on an incident to which I personally responded that's really emblematic of the problem we're set out to solve. And that was theft of intellectual property from an aerospace company. Now, this, as you might imagine, incident had a massive impact on the business's viability because due to the loss of a significant amount of research and development funds, as well as the loss of a large revenue stream. This is obviously, as you know from headlines all over, increasingly common. But what's not often discussed is the impact on the individuals who work at that business, the impact on their livelihood. And that's what really motivated me to come up with this solution. So looking into this issue, we found that often you'd find out about critical information only after an incident concern occurred. And the problem was that people weren't effectively sharing a wide range of workplace concerns. And when they did, the mechanisms available for them to speak up about these concerns failed to capture that relevant, consistent, actionable context on which we focus, that kind of information that allows you to reduce the costs of investigations, lawsuits, legal proceedings when an incident does occur. So, we set out to solve this problem through the issue, by addressing the issue of gathering better information, both subjective and objective, from non-experts to address a really wide range of critical workplace issues. Think about it this way. If you consider the use case of security investigations, where our product, Neighborhood Watch for Corporations, acts as a digital detective or a digital Columbo, if you remember the old TV show.
Sure do.
It places a professional investigator or a responder of safety, security, ethics, compliance in the pocket or on the desktop of every employee. And it uncovers information in a way that no questionnaire could ever duplicate. Because once you begin to focus on gathering that highly valuable context, Jay, it quickly outstrips the ability of any traditional approach that uses a script, an expert system, or skip logic. Just not dynamic enough. Doesn't have enough knowledge and data supporting it. And so you end up with less useful information.
I see. So you've talked about the impact on the business, the impact on the individual, but what's at stake here? Why is this really important?
Well, Jay, as you will appreciate, the risk here is enormous. We're talking about the impact on the finances of a business, the reputation, the brand of a business, the legal implications. And if you are a manager of one of these areas of risk in a business, whether it's large or small, you're placing your position at the company at risk if you don't effectively address these issues. The fact is, employees just aren't participating at the level employers need or want. And these existing methods for them to speak up just aren't capturing the information that's needed. Like I said earlier, we think the key is really being able to capture context around these questions, around these issues, that allows a company to respond more efficiently and effectively.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned some things that I think are really top of mind for both board of director members as well as chief compliance officers, and that is risks to the organization's reputation, as well as risks to the financial stability, the financial well-being of the organization. Last fall, I was at an NACD leadership meeting in Washington. That's the National Association of Corporate Directors. And interestingly, one of the speakers talked about risk in the context of not knowing what's going on around you. And I think that if you don't understand what the employees are, if you're not engaging the employees, if you're not using them to help you understand what's happening in the organization, you're probably missing a lot of issues. And if you're missing the issues, you can't get them on the table. And if you can't get them on the table, you're not going to be able to resolve them. So it's absolutely vital that we have information about what's going on in the organization. So from what you've seen, how do companies address this today?
Well, good point, Jay. And so we see really two main categories of companies. There's the employers who encourage and enable their staff to speak up in an effective manner, and they listen to the employees when they speak up in order to prevent or mitigate a host of negative events. At the other end of the spectrum, there's those who don't capture the right information from the right person at the right time and end up featured in the Wall Street Journal risk report for all the wrong reasons. Often these companies that fail in this regard have stovepiped, outdated reporting methods, a telephone hotline, an email form or a paper form, email inbox in each department, because they're not looking at the issue, Jay, from the perspective of the staff member, the employee. They're looking at it from the perspective of the responder. The employees, they don't care that there's a whole host of individuals who are going to respond differently. They just want one location to go to easily provide information when they have a concern.
I see. Give us some examples of that.
Well, I think one example we like to speak about a lot at Arbor Insight is the issue of the theft of a computer. Traditional reporting methods might say, okay, this is an object that was stolen. When did it happen? Where did it happen? When did you last see it? For us, with our combination of subject matter expertise and artificial intelligence, it's going to take that conversation in a different direction. It's going to appreciate that it's a computer that was stolen. And it's going to ask questions about when, where, how it occurred, who was involved. But then it's going to go off into, was the computer password protected? Was the data encrypted? Was there an external storage device stolen along with the computer? It's going to focus on the real core issue here of a stolen computer, which is really data security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. Those kinds of questions are the kinds of questions in the company I came from that the experts asked. And yeah, they're absolutely vital to understanding the whole context. So how do you propose to solve this problem?
Well, we did quite a bit of research into this issue, Jay, and really found 5 key reasons behind the fact that employees aren't speaking up to the level that employers need. One, it's just not convenient. People aren't tied to a desk anymore. They're not sitting in front of a phone all day. That's, corded and sitting next to their desktop. So when an issue occurs, they're just not, they're mobile and they're not taking the time to interact in ways that, old methods relied upon. 2, it's hard for people to remember the phone number or where to find the website, especially if you're talking about a large corporation. It's often buried within different intranet sites. Next, people just don't make phone calls. I can cite statistic after statistic, but people 55 and younger now are using their phones for texting and using apps at least as much as for making phone calls. So it's not just millennials and Gen Xers and Gen Ys that we're talking about here, but it's really the entire workforce who are using their phones for things other than making calls. Next is the issue of anonymity. Obviously, if you're using an email inbox or a web form that's on your computer at work that's tied to you individually, it's not going to be very anonymous.
Right.
And last but not least, people aren't sure what's important. And so if they don't have a guided process, they're not going to be comfortable speaking up in a way that they feel is going to be effective, that reduces participation rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so how we've addressed this is to marry together some components in a way that solves these problems, all in one location. It's really using a mobile device that most everybody has access to these days. Of course, we've made it available on desktop also, but it's marrying that mobile platform with the intelligence of that intelligent digital elicitation process. And together, it does a better job of emulating an expert investigator, a safety officer, ethics, or compliance manager. It's better than any operator or any form could do at eliciting valuable context. And it's more available, more convenient, and more comfortable for your workforce.
Mm-hmm. I really like the direction that this is going. It seems like it's a combination of the application of technology, but marrying that with years of human knowledge as well as years of machine learning. And through that kind of a process, you could really get a much better understanding of what's going on in your organization. When I think about companies like Uber and Wells Fargo, I think that they've really learned some important lessons about what happens when you don't effectively engage your workforce. That could be particularly troublesome with respect to things like compliance issues, obviously, with all the publicity and regulatory fines and things like that. So having a tool like yours, a process like yours, can encourage people to speak up because they've got these mobile devices right here in their hand, right? And it helps encourage reporting, but also helps encourage accountability within the organization because when people see something, they're going to want to say something sometimes. So from my perspective, this is more than a hotline. It's more than a form like you were talking about that people need to fill out. It's really that combination of a highly skilled investigator that knows what the right questions are to ask, combined with the mobile technology to surface the issues and get them on the table. Some years ago, I was involved in running special investigations for a company, and we did use a third-party outsourced provider. And the thing about using those kinds of companies is that they have to follow a script. And it really isn't possible, if you think about it, to kind of script everything that possibly could happen in an organization. And so you combine that with the fact that they really don't know all the companies that they're supporting. They don't know the business processes, for example. And so when somebody calls in, yeah, they can go through the script and they can collect certain basic information. But like you were saying earlier, they're not necessarily asking the right questions. So as an investigator, what I get is information that might be partial, vague. I wish I had been there to ask more questions, but I just didn't have the opportunity. It's a one-way kinds of conversation. And from the employee standpoint or from the reporter standpoint, they're calling in, they want to share some information, but they want to remain confidential. They want to remain anonymous. They don't want to oftentimes leave their name and address for somebody to get back to them. But as an investigator, without that hook back, it makes it very difficult sometimes to even have the predication to launch an investigation. So it's really critical if we're going to protect employees that we have to have a way for them to say something in a way that keeps them anonymous as well. So how did you figure this out? How did you actually arrive at the solution that you have?
Well, Jay, I think we had some very similar experiences in the corporate landscape. And so I sought out first to validate the perspective that we share in this regard, and by talking to a long list of companies. And after doing so, we realized if we combine three key things, we could increase engagement with regard to speaking up about workplace concerns. By doing so, increase employee morale. And of course, at the end of the day, increasing that reporting effectiveness allows the company to decrease their exposure to costs, reputation damages, and various incidents in the workplace. Now, those three things, we've talked about them to some degree, but most importantly, we're talking about the impact of better questions provided by subject matter experts, combined with that artificial intelligence and mobile platform technology, so that whether they're out on the street, at lunch, in the lunchroom, on the road, they have an easily accessible, meaningful interaction with our technology that asks the right questions in the right order at the right time to get that relevant, actionable, consistent data that managers of risk across the enterprise count on. And last, we present this platform the concept of neighborhood watch for corporations. And that's very purposeful. You know, we all know the concept of neighborhood watch from our residences. It's the idea of a more proactive, engaged community looking out for the well-being of others. We're taking that concept and setting it down in the workplace. And we're setting it down on the shoulders of some machine learning technology that's really coming into its own. And we have some, not only do we have experts in safety, security, ethics, and compliance contributing to our platform, but we have some experts in artificial intelligence that have been working on these issues for decades.
I see. This has been a very interesting conversation. When you mentioned neighborhood watch for corporations, I was part of a neighborhood watch for several years when I lived in Flint, Michigan, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Before we go with those, Scott, I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anything else maybe that I didn't ask about that you'd like to share with us before we go?
Well, Jay, I'd just like to take a moment, if I could, to sum up our conversation. You know, with intelligent digital elicitation, we're really focused on a process that allows you to get relevant, consistent, actionable data about critical issues that inform a wide range of really critical decisions in the workplace. Companies that take the time to and make the effort really to engage in collecting this information on various risk management issues are much better positioned than perhaps their competitors or those who have had incidents already to prevent and mitigate these issues. Whether it's a security breach, that's a physical security breach, a cybersecurity breach, a workplace violence issue, any type of issue that's going to impact, risk management is something that we're going to address with this tool. And as companies look for new and different ways to engage their workforce in preventing and mitigate these incidents, that's where we come in with Arbor Insight and our solutions.
Okay. Well, thanks again. How do people contact you if they have questions they want to follow up about what we talked about today?
Well, thanks for the question, Jay. If our viewers have questions about our core technology, they can visit us at arborinsight.com. And if they have interest in learning more about Neighborhood Watch for corporations, they can go to Neighborhood Watch app. That's neighborhoodwatchapp.com and learn more about our solution for enterprise risk management.
Okay. On behalf of GCA Studios, Scott, I'd like to thank you for being with us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jay. My pleasure.